Back in the fourth grade, I had a sister, Sister Santa Priolo, who would read to us stories about Christian heroes. And in particular, I remember stories about priests who sacrificed themselves in China. This was in the time when the communists were evicting all Catholics and clergy. And so I began to be inspired particularly then. I also began serving as an altar boy, and the Capuchins would come to our parish and give us missions and panegyrics. These were Italian festive preaching occasions. And I always admired what I heard from the Capuchins in terms of their preaching, but also their stark witness. They'd come with their sandals and their beards. And so I already, by the fourth grade, was convinced I was going to become a Capuchin.
I ended up as a truck driver. And so one day, the guy at the Catholic bookstore down on Broadway, I'm going in and buying all these books, and one day he gives me this really strange look. He said, "Are you Catholic?" And I go, "No." "Well, you're sure reading a lot of Catholic books and all that." And I had no idea how to join the Catholic Church or anything. I mean, do you just show up? I mean, what do you do? And he walked me through the whole process. He introduced me to a priest named Monsignor Anderson at the cathedral. So he worked with me one-on-one. So when I was in town, we just have meetings for a while, and he'd give me some reading, because I was reading some things and it didn't cover everything that needed to be covered. And he'd give me some reading, and I'd do that while I was out traveling on the road. And then in Easter of 2000, he had me go through the rites of Christian initiation at the cathedral. And so I was in the Catholic Church at that point. Incredible peace and joy and excitement of being a Roman Catholic, being part of the Catholic Church. Thing is, I was no longer happy as a truck driver. Said, you need to find something to do within the church. And this balance of prayer and yet working and serving with the poor. And something about that really, really intrigued me.
I wasn't raised religious. I never went to church growing up, really. I mean, except for like the occasional wedding or whatever. And they tell me I was baptized. I have no memory of that. But so church wasn't a big part of my life, but the question about what life is about was a big part of my life. And so I did all the stuff that people tell you to do, you know. They say do the sports thing, so I played sports, and that didn't really make me happy. But I said, well, work, get some money together, so I did that, and that never really made me happy. Or, you know, go party, drink, do all of that fun stuff, and I did a lot of that, probably more than was good for me. And that never really made me happy either. And so I came back to some of those Catholic thinkers, and little by little I was able to come to a place of faith without kind of realizing it, any magic moment or anything like that. I just one day realized that I did believe in God. And that not only did I believe in God, but that I really wanted to go to church, which was kind of weird at the time. Like, I didn't have any people in my life who were really going to church, so I kind of had to do that on the down low, you know. But the Archbishop, who's a Capuchin, I connected with him. He talked to me, and we talked about just life and different things, and he really encouraged me to pursue seminary, pursue religious life, and that encouraged me to look into the friars. And so then I started hanging out.
So I had a nun who taught me in the 7th and 8th grade. She knew the temperament, and she knew the personality, she knew the persona of the Capuchins, and she suggested the friars. And I really didn't see a Capuchin in his habit until I went away from home to high school outside of Pittsburgh at St. Fidelis. And yet, as I stayed in high school and then college, when I went to the novitiate and began to experience Capuchin history and Capuchin spirituality and Capuchin traditions and customs and Capuchin life, it was like it was hand in glove.
One of the things that I recall the most was working on the farm and driving the tractor for my dad, and I would go round and round the field for hours and hours. And at that time, I wouldn't have thought that that was a preparation for my religious life. But as I look back on it, those were contemplative times where I was just with nature and just into my own thoughts and into my own spirit. So as I look back now, I'm sure that that was a big preparation for later really enjoying the Franciscan aspect of nature and entering into moments of prayer.
In the 8th grade, I spent a lot of time with one of the sisters who was sent packages off to the missions, and so I'd say about once a week I was there at school doing things like that, and I think she was probably the one that put the idea in my head. But I didn't go away to the seminary till I was 13.
It was one time where my mom said, do you think maybe the Lord's calling you to be a priest? And I'd never thought of that before, but when she said it then, I thought, well, maybe that's how the Lord does call some men. Some know from grade school that they want to be priests, and others don't know until later. I knew that much. So I thought maybe He is calling me. So only when I opened myself up to that possibility did I begin to feel peaceful.
I think it happened in like 7th and 8th grade that I really got serious about religious life, and I think I wanted to be a teacher because I was taught by religious brothers in Baltimore. But then things didn't work out, so I got into show business, and then while in New York, I went to the 1 o'clock Mass for the actors, and so there was a brother who served the Mass who was so devout, and I really just thought, well, maybe that's what I'm called to be, and he was a Capuchin. So I think the Lord brought me to New York just for that, not for show business.
The very beginning of my vocation was when my mother sat me on her knee, and I was little, and she said to me, "Do you know that the Blessed Mother loves you more than I do?" And I thought, wow, that's a lot, because my mother loved me and I knew that. That's a very neat idea what she was doing. I don't know if she was planting my vocation, but it was a tremendous thing. Because a relationship with women is very important for a religious priest. People sometimes think, oh, well, he's going to be a priest that's celibate. He doesn't have to have a particular love for women or anything. Just the opposite. It's just the opposite. It says if you want to find out whether you have a vocation to the priesthood or religious life, first you have to meet the girl of your dreams. Then if you can give her up for the sake of Christ, then you've got a calling to be a Capuchin in a religious life.
God put a number of really significant people in my life who were great encouragers. My grandmother's being one, my parents obviously, the pastor, but probably one friar that I met at the very beginning was Father Peleus, who was the person who I first met that was a great inspiration. He was short and roly-poly and bold-headed, but a very joyful friar and very loving. And it was he who came to invite us to consider a retreat when we were 7th and 8th graders, and I went to this retreat when I was in the 8th grade, and I just felt at home at that point being with the friars and being in the seminary, and it was that point that I think the seed kind of began to germinate. It was very clear to me, having lived with these men for 4 years, seeing their prayer, their joy, the fraternity, their humanness. It was a great invitation for me to join the friars. So the road to my vocation really began with significant people and relationships.
The first inclination was when I was a senior in high school, so it would have been only 22 years ago. Wow. I was working on the farm with my parents and my brother. A good priest friend had given me a book of all the different ministries. So I just kind of paged and did a lot of homework and research. And part of me in the back of my mind for the last 15 years prior always wanted to be a friar, to really be with the poor on the streets as Francis. It was hard to say goodbye to the farm in many ways, because I mean, growing up on a farm all my life, that's all I know. But yet, it was a time for my new life, my new journey. So it was very beautiful.
I went to St. Joseph's Military Academy, and out there I met Father Thomas Moore Janek, and Father Thomas Moore was really the one who called me one day during my junior year. During the first 2 years of my high school year, he used to take me over to the
friary to serve Mass every once in a while. In the mornings I got out of our military training just to go over and serve Mass, which is always nice. My senior year, then I left St. Joseph's Military Academy and went over to St. Francis Seminary, and I just fell in love with the Capuchin way of life, and I've been happy in it ever since. It's been the joy of my life.
And I always had a childhood dream of wanting to be a Top Gun fighter pilot. So because of my ambitions, I began pursuing that in high school. And my counselors encouraged me to look at one of the military academies. And growing up here in Colorado, of course, the Air Force Academy is, something everybody dreams of. So I tried to apply there, and I ended up getting a congressional nomination to West Point and the West Point Military Academy and Annapolis. There was just something lacking in my heart. I ended up at the Stations of the Cross with a roommate of mine from college. The 12th station at the top was Jesus Crucified, and it was at midnight on Good Friday. And all I could hear was a quiet wind in the air. I could see all the stars in the San Luis Valley and this quaint little church off to my side. And I began pouring my heart out to this crucifix, life-size crucifix. And I was so empty. I was so longing for more, longing for meaning, longing for love. My whole life I was searching for unconditional love. And I said, okay, Lord, why am I up here on Good Friday? I'm willing to go wherever you want me to go. Help me. I had success in many people's eyes. And I grew up with material well-being. And I know that that is not the end-all be-all of happiness. But when I encountered Jesus at the Mass, I knew that was happiness. And once I experienced him at the Eucharist, I knew that that was for me.